Gary?
And I've had the discussion, Les and I have had that discussion, we've talked to Don Palmer, Randy, the abilities to do an LID, as has been done by this city in the past. There are some other options. This proposal is merely to address sidewalk rehabilitation with funds certain that are budgeted by the council every year. But you're exactly right. The participation by homeowners in the program, if there's an LID process that can assist with that and stretch money, that's certainly something that has been discussed, leveraging any city funding to assist. As Tyler and Kevin both said, you have some ancillary costs whenever you do a project like this. If it's a sidewalk that traverses an alley, the alley typically is the city's responsibility. You're faced with lots that have sidewalks on corner lots that have sidewalks on two sides. They need curb drops. Those are expensive. Those sorts of participation are the things that we would utilize developer participation funds, those sorts of things to assist with. Point I wanted to make as well is the amount of funding that the council adopts every year for the sidewalk program would fund what you see here. So the council would, what I'm saying is you set the budget level. So if the council says we've got $80,000 or $100,000 to spend on this program, then staff will go ahead and utilize that to implement this program. That does include the part-time help as well. As Tyler indicated, this proposal proposes a seasonal help. This is not a full-time position or a year-round position. So as the council in its budget sets aside a certain amount of money in the budget for this program, then the staff will then take that amount of money, put a program together for the following year.
Walter?
Thank you, ma'am. I want to thank Kevin and Tyler for bringing some however rough budget numbers to us. I'd called them earlier today because when it talked about the physical impact or necessary resources impacts physical, I told them that I didn't see any dollar marks in that one sentence and would really like to hear a few to get some idea. Two questions. In your number 5, establish a voluntary property owner assistance program. A, you say the city administers an annual sidewalk contract allowing for participation by property owners. I understand the concept. We have two sidewalk programs currently or have had. One is the Safe Routes to School work that's under contract, has been with McCall's Classic, I think. But we have a second contract every year for miscellaneous sidewalk work?
Yeah, currently there's quite a bit of different sidewalk work that we'll do as far as, for example, the water department will have a water leak, and they'll dig up an area and have to remove a few sections of sidewalk. That'll happen over the course of the winter. So then in the summertime, we'll bring them in and have them. Or, the streets part, we'll need to get in and replace something, replace a catch basin, take out a section or take out a corner. And then when we put it back, we have to pour back in an ADA compliant ramp. And so we end up with quite a bit of that type of work. And so then, we establish a smaller kind of miscellaneous concrete work contract that we've been.
With an independent contractor?
Yes.
Okay. So that is what you would be using in this regard?
Yes, we'd formalize it and then establish it as, we would put it out to bid, since the quantity would probably be more in a more formal way, so that we would have, working with the engineering department, to have unit amounts for different types of things that we might need, as far as, different thicknesses of walk that might go through a driveway or not, or that sort of thing. And so, but yeah, that's the plan.
Okay. Following the budget question.
Kevin, did you have something you wanted to say about that issue before we go on to the next question?
Yes. What we're referring to is, I believe we've been using a line item for sidewalk that has been funded roughly to the tune of $50,000 in the past.
That's where I was going.
Okay. The Safe Routes is completely different.
Separate. I understand.
Okay.
Regarding the $50,000, has the 50,000 been used for the type of city-initiated needed repairs of sidewalks, water department, snowplow tore one up, you name it? Has that been the 50? And if, I think Les, Madam Mayor, would like to elaborate. And what else has the 50 been used? And then secondly, is that the line item that y'all are proposing in the next budget cycle we consider increasing in order to work this program?
Les?
Thank you. The use of the sidewalk program funds varies from year to year. In some years, we have taken the entire amount or a very large portion of it and applied it to a single project. For instance, the First State Highway 8 project from the couplet out to White Avenue, the City Council agreed to fund sidewalks on the north side of the highway.
32,000.
Somewhere in that range. So that's where a large chunk of that year's funding went to that one project. So a check was written to ITD and away we went. And we've done that type of work in a couple of instances where we've teamed with ITD on a highway-related project. In other years, we have done more of a kind of a hybrid type project where, for instance, around City Hall 2 summers ago, the street department crews came in and did all the demolition work, and then a contractor was hired to do the concrete work around City Hall and the police station. So that was a combination of some of the funding went into that construction, and then some of it went elsewhere to deal with some of the things that Tyler mentioned, where we had a ramp here or there that needed to be addressed, or some sidewalk sections that had been taken out related to some utility work. So it varies every year. The larger pieces we've typically brought forward to the council for consideration, like a state highway related project. The rest of them are all managed on a kind of a case-by-case basis each year as we go through and try and I guess the other priority we've had over the years that the council's expressed is a desire to handle the ADA ramps. And so where we could over the years, we've put the funding there if we've had funding available. Your second part of your question, is that the area where we would propose funding would come out of or originate for this project?
On this program?
Yeah, in this upcoming, this current fiscal year, 2012 fiscal year, the line item was moved into the capital projects. It was bumped up to the 84,000, which was the number associated with all the Mobility Task Force hotspots projects. If you remember that discussion, how we got to that number. But that is probably where the funds would reside in whatever amount and funding level the council approves in each fiscal year. And then from that, we would fund the program that's proposed here and any other priorities that the council and the city come up with along the way.
And just to conclude, if I may, Madam Mayor.
Yeah,
So-
I have a follow-up on that piece. You carry on. Go ahead, Walter.
So the proposal before us is a request to approve this program with budgeting for the actual construction of it in the downtown, willing volunteer, single property owners, et cetera, type work that's been explained to us is in the future.
Is still in the future.
Because the
Certainly,
current budget is already allocated to Mobility Task Force priorities.
it's pretty well spoken for. There's some rollover funds from 11 to 12, plus which address the number one priority for mobility, which was the North Main Street project. There's also the hotspots component, and there are a couple other pieces. So that's kind of all been spoken for, I think, in our discussions in the 12 fiscal year. So the 13 fiscal year is when we'd have to address, is 50,000 the number, is it 80,000, is it 100,000 in that line item? And we would also have to address the part-time staffing needs in the engineering budget or streets budget, depending.
Okay, thank you.
Because I remember that 84,000 was squeaking to make those mobility task force hotspots.
That was the
to
estimate.
have those addressed.
At the
We
time.
also had a piece that was intended to sort of sweeten the incentive for LIDs, for citizen-initiated LIDs, to say the city would offer a modest match to try to make that more attractive to residents who would do it. And we haven't perhaps communicated that opportunity as clearly as we might have. So that was another piece that has been underutilized or not utilized.
And that is a separate funding in the LID construction funds, new in 13 or in 12 for sidewalks. You're correct.
Right. So if anybody's out there listening and wants to do that, call less, right? Tim?
Thanks, Mayor Cheney. I support the plan. I think Tyler and Kevin, along with Les and the Transportation Commission and the Mobility Task Force, has worked many hours on putting this plan together. I like the plan. I've liked it when it was initially presented in transportation, when it came to Public Works Finance. I think it's a great step forward. I think in general, funding is in place, or will be in years to come when the plan is adopted and put into place and utilized over the next several years for a long time. It's kind of interesting that we're talking about sidewalks. I made a copy of an article out of the Spokesman Review that was on Sunday's front page, and if you think Moscow has a problem with sidewalks, you ought to be in the city of Spokane. I mean, they're a train wreck up there. We've talked more about sidewalks and funded more about sidewalks in this town than the city of Spokane has for years. And it just goes to speak to how much effort's been put forth here. I think this is a great plan. I think we ought to take it to the next step. I wholly support it. Thank you for your efforts.
Tom, you chaired the Public Works Finance Committee that discussed this?
This last week, yeah. It's come to us twice recently. And this last time, we observed that most of the questions from the 2 weeks previous have been answered, and we voted to move it forward to the full council. And I'd like to actually make a motion that we approve the proposed sidewalk program.
Second.
Okay, Tom's motion and Tim's second. Further discussion before voting. Wayne?
I obviously missed the last Public Works and Finance meeting, but we had it before us prior to that, and I was very favorable. I thought I was pretty excited about this. I started to get a little bit worried when Kevin started bringing up these extra costs. That it's like, whoa, wait a minute now, what are we going to be doing to our budget here? But as usual, Gary has managed to, and Les, to allay our fears a little bit on that, and the money will be funded on a as we can basis, I guess, put it that way. And so, yeah, this is going to be a good step forward to where we can get some sidewalks taken care of, and the residents that are faced with having to do it can do it at a discounted cost. So I will certainly support it.
Walter?
A question that may or may not lead to an amendment. Should the public, and for whoever, should the public awareness campaign start as soon as possible if we approve this motion tonight, or start when we go into the budget process next spring and summer, where we have a better handle on what will be requested of us in terms of funding, so we'll know whether we're talking about doing 2 sidewalks and 20 feet of downtown, or doing 20 blocks of sidewalks and half of downtown.
Our reporters.
So the question's about the public awareness campaign and when.
We've already left. Our reporters left.
Well, and do we have a mechanism for a, waiting list, given that the funding wouldn't have been approved yet, Gary?
Well, certainly we'll have to, the public awareness campaign should begin as soon as we have a program. If you approve this tonight, we'll have to sit down with Les and Tyler and Kevin and look at what will happen over the next year. As we're preparing the budget in the spring of 2012, then of course we ought to be, we have certain prioritizations. You've seen the list of hot spots, so on and so forth. So I think there's a pretty good idea of what's necessary. There was a comment about money, putting away money for assistance downtown. Whatever the council puts in there, based on priority, that will be utilized for the program. So if there are more demands than we have money for, then they'll be prioritized and brought up, carried over, if you will, from year to year, just like we do for street projects, so on and so forth. So yeah, I agree with you. public information should be going out as quickly as possible, but what can be done over this next year, as Les said, is probably pretty much set.
Yeah, one of the question that I brought forward early on in this discussion was about equitable access to these
Sure.
resources, not just the people who are in the know because they happen to attend city council meetings or be connected to city processes, but it ought to be available to those who might have the need to be able to make this happen for themselves. So however we do this, I hope that there's, it's widespread enough, but the city cannot formally commit to this until the monies are allocated by the council in the budget process. Yes,
I may
Tyler.
add to that, Ned.
Please.
I think that there is, we've got plenty to do to get us to that point. I mean,
Yeah.
outside of this program, but even with the program, as far as just formulating a campaign for the public involvement, getting a lot of pieces in place, I think that there'll be. I think even if we wanted to start, if we got the direction to go and get the public awareness campaign going as quickly as possible, I don't think that that's something we could probably get off the ground until we were looking into until we're getting pretty far into next budget year anyway.
Okay. Sue?
I just had a quick question about the after 2-year period, work will be contracted by the city and billed to the property owner and liens, et cetera. If the city, if someone signs up for the voluntary assistance program and the city says, we don't have enough money, apply next year, apply next year, apply next year, does that stop the clock on the 2 years for them? In other words, if I want to get on the list and it's 4 years down the road and I keep applying for this list, is it then going to be done by the city with a lien against my house?
The only place that, and I guess this would apply to your house, is downtown would be the only place, because it's the only place that there is the city participation as far as a monetary participation.
Okay.
So outside of the downtown, then there isn't a monetary participation by the city, so there's no limit to how much walk someone could participate on. We might go out and tell somebody that they have 8 feet that's deficient, but they might say, you know what, I want to replace my entire frontage, which is great by us, and they can participate in the program and get a discounted rate for their entire frontage and pour their entire frontage, and there won't be any limit as far as the amount of participation that somebody can have in the program, because there's no real there's not a monetary outlay by the city. It would be just in the downtown.
Okay.
Okay.
I already replaced mine, so I can't get it.
So we have Tom's motion and Tim's second for moving forward with this. Is there any other discussion before voting?
I think my question on the public awareness campaign has made its point. Doesn't need to be added to the motion.
We'll start the roll call vote with Tim.
Aye.
Aye.
All right.
Aye.
And I.
That vote carries unanimously. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Good work, both of you. Thanks for staying up late for this.